Joseph Falcon-Freeman is an American anthropologist and geographer who completed his senior honors thesis at Louisiana State University, LSU, in 2010 through the Ogden Honors College, earning his bachelor's degree in geography and anthropology. His undergraduate research focused on countercultural movements and the social dynamics of non-hierarchical communities, exemplified by his ethnographic study The Rainbow Family of Living Light, Anarchy, Individuality and Communitas in a Contemporary Alternative Culture. The thesis demonstrates his interest in the intersections of anarchism, ritual, and communal living, and his use of both fieldwork and anthropological theory reflects formal training in qualitative social research. While the thesis itself represents early academic work, it shows a clear inclination toward cultural analysis, political anthropology, and the study of alternative social formations. This 2010 undergraduate honors thesis studies the Rainbow Family of Living Light, a loose network that holds large money-free gatherings in U.S. national forests each July. Drawing on the author's field notes and social theory, it explains in plain terms how thousands of people feed one another, make decisions, and handle conflicts without formal leaders or police. Food is shared through volunteer-run kitchens, order is kept by bystanders stepping in non-violently, and major choices are made by open, slow consensus circles. The thesis argues these gatherings create a temporary in-between space where everyday social ranks matter less, making it easier to feel solidarity and cooperate, but it also shows how that solidarity depends on clear boundaries from Babylon, mainstream society, and can coexist with strong individualism. In short, it's an accessible account of how a modern countercultural community briefly builds a functioning, leaderless microsociety, and what that reveals about cooperation, conflict, and identity. In the introduction section of The Rainbow Family of Living Light, Anarchy, Individuality and Communitas in a Contemporary Alternative Culture, Falcon-Freeman explains what the Rainbow Family is and why he chose to study it. He describes the family as a loose, leaderless community that gathers each year in the woods to live peacefully, share food, and practice cooperation without money or hierarchy. The introduction outlines his goal: to understand how such a large group can function without formal rules or authority and what this reveals about human nature and social organization. Drawing from his personal fieldwork at rainbow gatherings, he plans to alternate between storytelling from his experiences and academic analysis. He also situates his work within earlier studies of the rainbow family and similar alternative cultures, aiming to connect what happens at these gatherings to broader ideas in anthropology, especially the concepts of liminality, temporary social suspension, and communitas, intense social unity. In simple terms, the introduction sets up the project as an exploration of how people can come together, live freely, and create community outside normal society. The Rainbow Gatherings chapter opens with a ground-level picture of rainbow gatherings, free, week-long, leaderless camps held each early July on U.S. national forest land, sometimes drawing tens of thousands. Money is not used. The stated norms are no money, no alcohol, and no violence. Food, medical help, and entertainment are provided at no cost through voluntary effort. Participants frame the forest camp as a refuge from Babylon, mainstream society. The U.S. Forest Service treats large permitless assemblies as illegal, which creates recurring tension over permits and policing at the site. Attendees are intentionally diverse. Beyond the stereotype of 1960s leftovers, the gatherings include youth and adults with a wide range of politics and religions, from Marxists to libertarians, and from Christians to pagans, along with students, travelers, professionals, journalists, and law enforcement observers. This heterogeneity is by design, tracing to the first 1972 Colorado gathering, conceived as a meeting ground to bridge fragmented countercultural groups after the 1960s and to model cooperative living despite differences. Feeding thousands without money relies on decentralized kitchens and shared labor rather than paid staff or vendors. Kitchens collect and prepare food for dinner circle, a daily communal meal structured around shared ritual elements like a group om, which reinforces unity and equal access to food. The system works because many participants rotate through tasks rather than creating a permanent underclass for unpleasant work. In practice, that broad participation sustains large-scale provisioning without formal management. The gatherings ban alcohol yet tolerate other substances within a community ethic of sharing and restraint. Drug use, including cannabis, is common, but it is embedded in norms that discourage conspicuous consumption without offering to share. Examples include informal support for tobacco and cannabis seekers, Nick at Night and Emergency 420, which reflect the same reciprocity that governs food and other services. Politically, many longtime participants view the gatherings as a practical experiment in non-coercive social organization, what scholars call prefigurative politics. By living together temporarily without markets or formal authorities, they test ways to solve collective problems, such as feeding large groups or keeping the peace, through consensus and voluntary action. The approach rejects mainstream strategies that work within the system and instead tries to enact the desired social relations in the present. This political stance sits alongside the ongoing permit conflict with federal authorities, which underscores the movement's commitment to autonomy and assembly on public land. Liminality and Communitas explains those two key anthropological ideas, and shows how they help make sense of rainbow gatherings. The author first outlines Victor Turner's theory that during rituals, people temporarily step outside normal social structures, liminality, and experience intense feelings of equality and connection, communitas. He then reviews later scholars who both admired and critiqued Turner, noting that while his ideas capture how people bond in transitional moments, they can oversimplify or romanticize complex social realities. Finally, the chapter connects these theories to modern countercultures such as the hippies, raves, and festivals like Burning Man, where participants deliberately create spaces of freedom, creativity, and shared identity outside everyday norms. The author argues that rainbow gatherings function in much the same way. They are temporary, transformative communities that suspend ordinary rules and let people experience what it feels like to live without hierarchy, even if only for a short time. Communitas and the division of labor at gatherings explains how the rainbow family manages work, conflict, and decision-making without leaders, money, or formal organization. The author shows that the community's sense of unity, what anthropologists call communitas, depends on keeping labor and responsibility fluid and shared. Everyone contributes in different ways, from cooking and cleaning to peacekeeping and planning, so no one holds authority or gets stuck in one role. Two key practices keep this system working. Shanti Sena, the collective peacekeeping method where anyone can step in to calm conflicts through nonviolence and group support, and council, an open circle where decisions are made by consensus rather than voting. These processes are slow but intentional. They ensure everyone's voice matters and prevent hierarchies from forming. Together, they show that the rainbow family's cooperative spirit isn't just a philosophy but something people actively create through everyday actions that blend equality, empathy, and mutual responsibility. The Shanti Sena subsection describes how the rainbow family keeps peace at its gatherings without police or security. The name means peace army in Sanskrit, but in practice it's not an organized group, it's everyone. If someone yells Shanti Sena during a conflict, anyone nearby is expected to help. People gather around, speak calmly, sing, chant Om, or simply form a circle to diffuse tension. The goal isn't to punish or control anyone but to restore harmony through collective presence and empathy. This approach reflects the rainbow family's belief that peacekeeping should be everyone's shared responsibility, not the job of a few authorities. By handling problems together in this way, participants show that a community can maintain safety and order through trust, cooperation, and non-violence rather than force or hierarchy. The council subsection explains how the rainbow family makes group decisions without leaders, voting, or formal rules. When an issue needs to be discussed, such as where the next gathering will be held, everyone is invited to sit in a circle, often in an open meadow. A talking object, like an eagle feather, is passed from person to person, and only the one holding it may speak, ensuring everyone gets a chance to be heard. Decisions are reached through consensus, meaning the group continues discussing until everyone agrees or can accept the outcome. This can take hours or even days, but it prevents anyone from being overruled and reinforces equality and patience. The process emphasizes listening over arguing and values community harmony more than efficiency. In simple terms, council is how the rainbow family practices democracy without hierarchy, showing that large groups can make important choices peacefully, slowly, and together. Anarchy and Communitas links the rainbow family's way of living together to the political philosophy of anarchism, showing that the gatherings are not chaotic free-for-alls but real-life experiments in voluntary cooperation without rulers. The author explains that rainbow life works through communitas, a shared sense of unity that arises when people interact as equals rather than through hierarchy. This communal spirit allows the group to organize food, peacekeeping, and decision-making without formal leaders, police, or money. The chapter argues that rainbow gatherings succeed where many utopian or political movements fail because they combine individual freedom with collective responsibility. Drawing on examples from social theory and disaster studies, the author suggests that these gatherings briefly reveal how people can self-organize peacefully when normal structures of authority are suspended. In simple terms, the rainbow family shows that anarchy can function, not as disorder, but as community built on trust, empathy, and shared purpose. The rainbow family, Constructions of Self and Community explores how the rainbow family balances two seemingly opposite values, individual freedom and community unity, and how its members use daily rituals and symbols to keep those forces in harmony. The author describes the family as a collective of individuals, meaning it celebrates personal expression while still fostering togetherness through shared practices. People assert their individuality through clothing, art, and behavior, yet continually reaffirm solidarity through traditions like hugging, calling each other brother and sister, and participating in communal meals and circles. The chapter shows how the gatherings intentionally separate Rainbowland from mainstream Babylon, creating a temporary world where equality and openness are the norm. Ceremonies such as drum circles and the 4th of July silent prayer for peace act as powerful bonding moments that renew a sense of unity without erasing individuality. By the end, the author concludes that the rainbow family's greatest accomplishment is maintaining this balance, offering a living example of how people can do their own thing together, using shared rituals to continually rebuild both self and community in an egalitarian space. Drum circling describes how nightly drum circles at rainbow gatherings create a shared sense of energy, rhythm, and connection among participants. After dinner, people gather around large campfires to drum, dance, and celebrate under the stars. The scene is spontaneous, no stage, no audience, and no leaders. The drumming can last all night, drawing people into a trance-like state where normal boundaries between self and others fade. The author explains that this collective rhythm helps generate communitas, the feeling of unity and equality that defines the rainbow family. At the same time, drum circles express individuality. Each drummer or dancer contributes their own style and energy, yet all are harmonized through the beat. The practice blends personal freedom with shared experience, symbolizing how the rainbow family turns simple, joyful acts, like drumming together, into a way of creating community without hierarchy. The 4th of July silence describes the rainbow family's most sacred and symbolic ritual, held each year at noon on July 4th. Thousands of people gather in the main meadow, join hands, and observe a long, shared silence to pray or meditate for world peace. The moment is deeply emotional. Some people weep, others sit quietly or chant softly, and it marks a powerful pause in the usually noisy, festive atmosphere of the gathering. When the silence ends, it gives way to an explosion of joy, drumming, dancing, laughter, and celebration. The author explains that this ritual mirrors a classic pattern in anthropology: separation, silence, and return, and that it renews both individuals and the group. The quiet period symbolizes reflection and unity, while the joyful celebration that follows represents rebirth into community. In plain terms, the 4th of July silence is a collective reset, a moment when thousands of people come together in peace, reminding themselves why they are there and rekindling the spirit of love and solidarity that sustains the rainbow family. The conclusion of the rainbow family of living light, Anarchy, Individuality and Communitas in a Contemporary Alternative Culture brings together the main ideas of the thesis and reflects on what the rainbow family teaches about community, freedom, and human nature. The author begins by asking whether the rainbow family could be considered a cult, since it uses kinship terms like brother and sister and creates a strong sense of belonging. He argues that it is not, because unlike cults, rainbow gatherings emphasize personal freedom rather than control. People come and go as they please, and individuality is celebrated, not suppressed. Still, the comparison raises an important question about communitas, the deep sense of unity that arises in such settings. The author points out that while communitas feels universal and inclusive, it can also depend on creating an us versus them boundary. At rainbow gatherings, that boundary is drawn between the family and Babylon, or mainstream society. To make this point clearer, the author compares rainbow gatherings to large social events like the 2010 New Orleans Saints Super Bowl celebration, where people of all backgrounds came together in shared joy. That feeling of togetherness, of everyone being part of something larger, is also a form of communitas. However, it usually depends on opposing something outside the group, in that case, the rival team. The same paradox, the author warns, can appear in much darker forms, such as fascist movements that unite people by demonizing others. In other words, communitas itself is not automatically good or bad, it is amoral, meaning it can be used to create either harmony or harm depending on the values that shape it. The thesis concludes that the rainbow family stands out because it manages to balance unity and individuality. Its gatherings nurture equality and cooperation, but they also protect the right to do your own thing. By combining anarchism with empathy, the family creates a temporary society where people can practice living freely together without domination or coercion. The author argues that this coexistence of independence and community is what makes rainbow gatherings valuable to study, They offer a glimpse of how humans might organize life beyond hierarchies, markets, and governance. In the end, Falcon-Freeman suggests that the Rainbow Family's experiment is more than a countercultural curiosity. It is a living model of anarchic communitas, showing that cooperation, generosity, and shared joy can emerge naturally when people trust one another. Though these gatherings are temporary, they reveal a lasting truth. Human beings are capable of creating order and meaning together, not through control or profit, but through shared experience and mutual respect. Falcon-Freeman based his thesis on first-hand fieldwork conducted at the 2008 and 2009 U.S. National Rainbow Gatherings, specifically in the Bridger-Teton National Forest, Wyoming, and the Santa Fe National Forest, New Mexico. At these events, he lived among participants, observed daily life, and took detailed field notes on how the Rainbow Family organizes itself without leaders or money. His accounts of peacekeeping through Shanti Sena, decision-making in council, and communal rituals like drum circles and the 4th of July silence all come from these direct experiences. These two gatherings provided the real-world foundation for his broader analysis of how the Rainbow Family creates temporary, egalitarian communities based on cooperation, unity, and personal freedom. From the 2008 National Gathering in Bridger-Teton National Forest, Wyoming, the thesis recounts several concrete episodes. On his first day, the author was told, "The best and the worst thing about the family is that anyone can join," a line he uses to frame the striking mix of participants, from impoverished full-time travelers to middle-class New-Agers on vacation, coexisting in one camp. He describes the community's real-time response to law enforcement, including the 6-up warning system that ripples through the site when officers appear, prompting people to leash dogs, put away pipes, and avoid confrontations. The high-tension flashpoint came when Forest Service officers, guns drawn, pursued a man into Kids Village. An elder asked them to lower weapons because children were present, but she was immediately handcuffed, angering onlookers. As peacekeepers formed a human buffer, officers fired pepper spray paintballs into the line and into the crowd, an escalation that nearly led to a riot before police withdrew. Days later, authorities rode through with weapons drawn announcing a mandatory evacuation over a distant plume of smoke. Many suspected a pretext, organized water buckets anyway, and watched the story shift to a limited parking lot threat as more agents arrived. These scenes are set against a broader backdrop of permit disputes and what an ACLU Wyoming report called a consistent pattern of harassment and overzealous enforcement, which the author cites to contextualize 2008 as a peak year for conflict at a rainbow gathering in the U.S. At the 2009 National Rainbow Gathering in the Santa Fe National Forest, New Mexico, the author's field notes provide vivid ethnographic stories showing both the beauty and the social complexity of rainbow life. He describes the scene of arrival: tents, tarps, and teepees spreading through the forest as thousands assembled to create a temporary village built entirely on cooperation. The evenings brought drum circles, most memorably one near the Love and Oven's kitchen, famous for serving pizza fresh cooked in the woods. The author recalls a powerful night of drumming and dancing under the moon, where people fell into trance-like states of ecstatic unity, a moment he interprets as the living expression of communitas, or deep social connection beyond hierarchy. Another detailed episode is the 4th of July silence, the central ritual of the gathering. On the morning of July 4th, as heavy rain fell, thousands of people gathered in concentric circles in the main meadow, many unclothed or draped in soaked fabrics, holding hands in complete silence to pray for world peace. When the silence ended, the meadow erupted into joy, drumming, singing, dancing, and hugging in the mud as sunlight broke through. Falcon-Freeman describes it as a collective rebirth, a moment of transformation that turned individual emotion into communal celebration. He also documents how the Rainbow Family's anarchic organization played out in practice: communal kitchens feeding everyone for free, councils forming in open meadows to make group decisions, and peacekeeping handled by Shanti Sena volunteers instead of police. Although tensions with authorities continued, the 2009 gathering was remembered less for confrontation and more for cooperation and ritual unity. Through these stories, the author presents the New Mexico gathering as a living example of how the Rainbow Family turns ideals of peace, love, and freedom into everyday social reality, even if only for a few weeks in the woods.